KACEY, how did you first get involved with community theater?
Theater for me has always been a passion. Of course, it didn't come naturally for me. I grew up on a cattle ranch, which was a little non-productive towards theater, but I always had a passion for it. When I was in high school, it was something that I began exploring and finding out about, and throughout my college and other educations, it was something I was always looking for and doing. So I started out working in little 100-seat community theaters where you have a budget of $150 to do sets, costumes, everything with, and really loved that experience, loved the work and the inventiveness you have to do to make that happen. There's also a great amount of spirit and teamwork involved with that. So it's something early on that really drew me in, and that feeling of everyone coming together to make something great was something that was always very exciting for me.
You decided to pursue a degree in technical theater. Tell us about that.
Well, it took me a while to decide what I wanted to do in college. Theater's always been a passion, as I said, but I wasn't brave enough to go for it. In Utah, there's not a lot of vocations or openings per se for someone to work in the theater. So for many years, it was something of a dream for me, but I didn't know that I could really go for it. So I explored some other aspects when I was in college and finally just decided it's my passion. It's what I've always loved. It's what I've always wanted to do. And I should try it, at least see what would happen. So I studied at Utah State University and got a lot of experience there and started to realize that this is something I could do. It's a very competitive market, but it's something I've always wanted, and I went for it, and it's worked out well.
How did you come to be involved with Hale Centre Theatre?
Kind of have an interesting story here. Hale Centre Theatre has been a passion of my family's for a long time. When my wife and I first got married, my in-laws actually gave us tickets, season tickets to Hale Centre Theatre. So we started coming here as patrons. In fact, my wife and I's first date as husband and wife was to see a show here at Hale Centre Theatre. So we began seeing shows here, and it was just something we loved. And I just, from the first time I walked in the doors, I thought, I'm going to work in this place. I'm going to do something here. And so we were patrons for a long time, and over a few years later, one of my friends was working here, and I heard about it, and I decided that I was going to come help him. And I came in the doors, and while I was here, I made sure I marketed myself and networked with every single person in the building and tried to get to know and get involved, and just started a relationship with people here that grew into a career. And I broadened myself out. I had to find ways to make myself available and to make myself needed at Hale Centre. I started off doing some projection work and video work and some simple things like that, which then led into more and more projects, and then I was able to paint some things and do props for some things. And when the timing was right and there was an opening, I was available and I was here and they knew me and I had my foot in the door, and it's history since then.
Tell us from a technical director standpoint why stage automation is important.
I think stage automation is important for a few reasons. One, for consistency. When you're able to automate set pieces or flies, it allows you to be extremely accurate and consistent with what they're doing. That's really important as you're focusing on safety and allowing your actors to feel a sense of security and knowing what things will be doing night after night. Also, it helps you in being able to move larger pieces easier and safer. There's always a risk when you have something large or a little awkward and relying on people to move it versus automation. So there's a lot of benefits to it. Again, it allows you to be consistent and safe. And for me, I want things to be a certain way, and automation allows me to make that happen.
Now, from the artistic point of view, why do you see stage automation becoming more and more integral for theater as a whole?
I think the artistic side is why you automate for a lot of reasons. The new modern musical is requiring a lot more automation. The modern musical is set up in a way that it's more like a movie than the traditional musical of the War Horse years. For example, in a recent production of 9 to 5, the very last song of Act 1 had 12 locations within one song. So how you're able to get to all of those locations, seamlessly is something really hard. So when you're able to automate things, you can make things move faster and move quicker, and you're not having to see your technicians running around on stage or taking the lights to a blackout or closing a curtain. Things just happen in front of the audience, which creates magic, which is another really important reason why you want to automate. People like seeing things move. When you come to the theater, you want to see magic. And whether it's a set piece tracking across a stage or something flying in or something lifting them up from your ground, automation helps you achieve that magic that's something not predicted. I think in traditional theater, if you're having a technician move things or setting a backdrop and replacing your set behind it, there's somewhat of a predictability to it. You know what's going to happen, and you've seen that before. When you're able to automate, that's when you get magic, because things are moving by themselves, and it creates something that the audience has never seen before. When designing, I always try to look for extra moments to add just a little bit of extra fun in our show, or something else to wow our audiences. In CHITTY, there's a lot of effects, and one of the most talked about are smoke rings. It's a pretty simple thing that we're doing. We are creating a vortex that shoots smoke rings across our stage when we have our cannon fires. So how it's created, it's simply a big tube. This is something left over we had in our warehouse from one of our old water shows. And we add fog into the inside of it, and this is all done off stage behind our curtains. And then on stage, when the cannons erupt, there's a technician behind here, and they pull back this bungee cord that's attached to a shower curtain, and it shoots smoke rings across our audience. It's really something that's super simple and very inexpensive to do, but has been one of the most talked about effects that we have in our entire show. Confetti is also another effect that we use a lot here at Hale Centre Theatre. There are a variety of ways to use it and implement it in a show, whether it be our technicians dropping it by the handful from up above in our catwalks, or in a recent production of Joseph, we actually had it come out of our floor. We installed tubes into our floor, and down in the basement, we used simple leaf blowers that were connected to the tubing, and the techs would put handfuls of confetti into the tubes, and the leaf blowers would shoot it up into the audience and over the stage, and it was something really great. To add extra flair to that, we put LED lights underneath it, and the LEDs allowed the confetti to change color as it came out. You can also buy these simple tubes that are sold by FLITTON. It's a great type of confetti. It's the perfect size that when you launch it, like that, it floats down and has a long hang time to make it extra magical and a little extra something. It's kind of what we're always going for, that little extra that makes your shows a little bit more magical. At Hale Centre, a lot of our pieces fly in, and most of them are constructed out of aluminum. As a set designer, it's always tricky to find ways to make aluminum not look metallic and not look aluminum, and one trick we use is using tile adhesive. This piece is solid aluminum, and what we do to create texture on it is drag the whole thing in tile adhesive, and then we can use fingers or other tools to get a wood texture. This one's just kind of painted red, so there's not a lot of depth to it. But the tile adhesive is the one thing we found that always sticks, it doesn't come off, and allows you to get great texture, whatever you want it to be, on metal or metallic surfaces.
Rob, I remember you kind of got dragged into the world of theater by your sisters and your family. Tell me about that.
Well, my entire family is involved in community theater, and so I've been involved from a very young age. The first theater they were involved with was the Heritage Theater in Perry, Utah. And so the first power tool I got to run was helping my dad build sets for that theater when I was 8 years old, with a lot of parental supervision. He wouldn't let me run the skill saw. I was upset about that, but I got to run drills, so that was pretty cool.
Excellent. And then later you helped out at Stage Stop Theater?
I did. My sisters both performed and directed shows at the Stage Stop Theater, and so I worked for the Barris family, helping them from time to time build the more technical sets, like the boat for Big River, and we did some flying for Christmas Carol that was terrible, but still a lot of fun.
How did you acquire your wide-ranging vocational skills?
Well, I was homeschooled by my mother, which was awesome, so I got to play a lot. There was a lot of discovery. I learned the art of metal fabrication from a retired shop teacher when I was 13 years old, where me and my brother spent hours building all kinds of creations, including a three-wheeler that we built from scratch with full suspension a year before the Honda three-wheeler came out with its full suspension. And then I worked for a lot of farmers growing up, so I learned a lot of my mechanical skills from that. If the tractor broke in the field, you would fix it, or you would be walking home. So I got very clever with mechanics.
Excellent. What was your first project here at Hale Centre Theatre?
I helped out with Big River. I helped with water. I built the mechanical structure that the stage would land on. It folded up out of the water. And then I helped with the rigging.
So if I remember correctly, the entire stage was covered with a tank of water, and you're talking about a stage that lowered down over top of it to give us land.
Yeah, the stage came down out of the ceiling, and so I had a structure that rolled up out of the water for that to land on, and it helped roll it into position and supported it over the top of the water.
Cool. You've been involved in 2 different stage tracking systems that we've used here. Tell us about the first one and what you were trying to do.
Well, the first one was for Footloose, and that's actually how I got my full-time job here at the theater. I was a private contractor, and my brother and I prototyped and then sold the idea to Mark Dietlein, who, when he saw my bid, offered me a full-time job instead of wanting to hire me as a private contractor. But it was actually about 16 inches tall. It was a fault stage that we built over the top of the existing stage. I built it in a warehouse in about 15 different pieces, and then they simply plugged together. It was the first one that we'd ever seen that actually can turn radiuses. Each track turned 7 different radiuses as it went across the stage. And me, like I said, me and my brother designed it, engineered it, and then I actually built it.
Excellent. Now, you were involved recently in another tracking system, kind of a second generation of that.
Yes.
What did you learn from the first time that helped with the second one?
We always loved to second crack at building something. We learned that we could make it in a much smaller application. So the first one was 16 inches tall. The second one was only 4 1/4 inches tall. Excuse me, 3 1/4 inches tall. We learned that both rope and cable kind of act like screws as they run separate directions. So in one direction it will force the rope up or the cable up, and the other direction it'll force it down. So that was something huge to learn for trying to turn radiuses with a tracking system. So the new one I built out of UHMW, which is an oil impregnated plastic, and I actually put 7-degree lead ends on the inside of the track that would help force the cable down as it traveled the direction that generally causes it to lift. And without knowing this, we actually wouldn't have been able to pull it off. Every time you turn a corner, the cable would have simply popped out of the track. We also, the tools that we use in our warehouse, we've gotten a lot nicer ones, so we were able to build winches, deck winches that would cause the carriages to go back and forth, and we're able to actually build all that stuff in-house.
What kind of motors did you use for your winches?
The first tracking system, we use 90-volt DC motors, which are an amazing way on a tight budget to do automation for a community theater. They're very inexpensive, very easy to use. The drawbacks are you can't do any type of show controls. Your positioning is done through proximity sensors or limit switches or clutches. So the new ones that we use, we're able to put absolute encoders and PLCs so that we can do show cues. We can have it go to a certain position, change speeds in between the travel of that position, and have as many positions as we want. So this is a pretty inexpensive pneumatic ram setup. This is for a large set piece. So the rams will lift it onto its wheels so we can roll it out on stage, and then we'll lift the wheels up so it'll be solid on stage so they can dance or whatever they need to do on it. So the rams themselves are about $180, and then most of the parts are actually from Harbor Freight or any other inexpensive supplier. So this is actually a manual piece driven by this little 3-way valve right here. So the wheels are actually on a swing arm, and then the pneumatic ram just raises and lowers the swing arm. So one of the cool ways that we align Chitty to make sure that she lines up over the pneumatic rams is we have lasers on board, and they line up to this spike mark right here. And so you just move the car over till it lines up on the spike mark, and then you go ahead and we hit the loading cue, and that'll bring the rams up into the socket. So the pneumatics on Chitty are pretty state-of-the-art. just to be able to purchase these, we had to build a working prototype to show it to the company that manufactures it before they would even let us buy them to put them in the stage. So these pneumatics are positioning, which has never been done before. We have a couple different ways that we do it. We have 2 sets of valves. So we have one that bring it to the loading cue that you just saw. Then the second set is actually going to fly it. These are hooked to NAVIGATOR. So Brian's written cues where these are actually timed for position. And that's kind of the easy version of how we pulled that off.
Matt, did you ever think you'd work in live theater?
Absolutely not. I had no idea that I'd ever be working in a theater. It was never even a consideration looking for any type of employment. And I've worked several different fields.
What kinds of experience have you had in job?
For this job, I've had a lot of construction experience. I started out as a young boy. I think at 9 years old, I started making stained glass windows. From there, I was always interested in woodwork, framing of the windows. As I got older, I think one of the first jobs I took was a tile setter. Worked as that for a long time. I've had cabinet shop jobs. I worked as a framer, a roofer. I did have some metalworking jobs throughout those years. I also worked in some dangerous jobs where I learned a lot of safety aspects, and some people maybe not think the theater is a dangerous place, but at times the theater can be very dangerous, so it was nice to have some of that safety background as well coming into this job.
So I understand it's your stained glass work that got you started at Hale.
Yes, I built a stained glass window for the show Annie, and that was kind of my foot in the door, and I started helping with changeovers, changing from one show to the next, short after that.
And then we recognized your skills, and not long after that you were offered a job as construction manager. And
Yes, right away.
what would you say has been one of the craziest or most involved sets you've worked on building here?
We've done a lot of crazy sets. I think one of the hardest would be Treasure Island. We didn't have a lot of the automation that we do now as far as winches, and we did a lot of heavy flies manually.
The mast in particular didn't always sit on stage. So you talk about heavy flies. How did you make that work?
That fly weighed about 400 pounds, and it was done manually, so we had to do a 3-to-1, I believe it was a 3-to-1 block and tackle system in order for the techs to be able to pull that heavy of a fly up manually. That's another thing. I've also been an avid rock and ice climber for about 20 years, which I gained a lot of rigging experience from that, as well as being sent to Vegas for different rigging classes over the years.
We used water during Treasure Island. In fact, I believe a 12-foot deep tank so that pirates could be killed, thrown off the boat, and disappear into the water.
Yes.
Tell us about the build of that tank.
That was definitely one of the challenges in Treasure Island. Besides the rigging was extremely hard, and the water just sent us over the top in that show. Being that it's 12 feet deep, that creates a lot of weight and force from the water pressure. Being at 12 feet down, we had to get a structural engineer to come tell us what we needed to do that properly. We also had to move a main structural beam in the theater we had to have cut out. He had to tell us how we could do that properly. So there was a lot of thought going into, anytime you do water, there needs to be a lot of thought going into it because there's a lot of danger involved in water if you do have a problem. It could be a catastrophe, especially with 12 feet.
Sorry, who did you find as good resources when you were working with water?
We've done water before, so we used a company that does liners, and it's almost similar to a waterbed liner. And that's what we lined our 12-foot deep tank with, but the tank was built out of steel, lined with wood, and then lined on top of that with 2 layers of a rubber liner, similar to a waterbed liner. And it was mainly just that lining company that we used on that particular portion of it, but there was several different people that we used for the whole process. It wasn't just one company that knew exactly how to build a crazy tank that we wanted to build. So it's hard to find someone someone that knows exactly what we want for what we want to do with it. Sometimes people think we're crazy.
Matt, tell us about the use of linear guides to make things better in our stage automation.
Okay, the linear guide. We started using linear guides probably about 9 years ago. This is what I'm talking about. This is a T-slot material. It's extruded aluminum. It's made by a company called T-slots. And we buy this by the foot. We can get it in 20-foot lengths. This roller wheel just slips on and rolls with it. But what we use this for is to guide many set pieces that we push through the floor, a lot of the flies that we come in that don't actually land on the floor, especially if they're going to have an actor on it. They will keep the fly stable. This is just another example of another way we've used these. This is an air ram, just hooked to a linear guide, easily adjusted because you can slide it up and down. This air ram is just going to push a caster down and lift the piece up so you can roll it out. The air ram will just retract. The piece is on the ground. This is just a simple stop. You can put anywhere to adjust the air ram. Just a simple way to use an air ram with a linear guide to lift a piece. Okay, a good use for linear guides is flies per se. If you need the fly to not move around and be stable, let me show you an example of how we've used it before. Here's our catwalk per se. We've used the linear guides. We'll run linear guides 20 feet down straight off of our catwalk grid system. And then the fly, whatever it is, will be attached to these linear guides and it will roll up and down these and keep it where it needs to be. Versus cables, if there was an actor on this moving around, these cables would be all over the place. Another use would be down under the stage. Here's your stage floor. You want to push a desk. Let's say you want to push a desk through the floor. You run these linear guides off the bottom of the stage floor down to your lower floor, and you can put whatever you want in there and push it off these guides and keep it right where you need it kept. You can use an automated lift under there to push it, or even a lot of times manually, we've done over the years, is just put 2 pulleys here, wires going up to counterweights. It's just an easy way to do a lift with these linear guides.
What made you decide to pursue a degree in theater?
So that's kind of a long story. I've been involved in theater since I was a kid, basically since elementary school. But I was more on the performing side, actually. So all through high school, junior high, I performed and have done that quite a bit in community theaters in Salt Lake and different places, and all through college. So I've always had a love for it, just kind of that ability and that desire to present a story and to help people understand things differently, and look at the world through different eyes has been kind of cool to me. So I've always enjoyed theater, and so from a young age, that was kind of something that I always wanted to study or to do and to be involved in. So I have been. So then I went to college in Southern Virginia, and when I was there, I actually kind of got more involved in the technical theater aspect. So I kind of switched. I stayed involved in shows, but I actually switched over and started doing more of the lighting design, the electric work, the carpentry skills, things. And so I switched and actually have a degree in technical theater, in which I was able to come and work here at Hale Centre Theatre because of that. And so it was always just kind of a life, like I've always enjoyed theater. And so it's just kind of transitioned from on stage to backstage.
You first came to us after graduation and we hired you to run set crew. I still remember your resume application. Where did you become a finished carpenter?
That's kind of two questions, so I'll answer both. My finished carpentry skills I actually gained mostly, I worked with my father, who now also works for the theater, ironically enough. We worked as finished carpenters doing custom staircases and handrails in big fancy houses. So I would work with him during summers and a couple of years here and there as I was going to college and different things. And so I gained a lot of my just carpentry skills actually doing finished carpentry in homes, which is slightly different than what we do on stage, but the information and the techniques translate over really well, especially in a space like ours where we're theater in the round, where you're building not so much just a facade, but a full-on piece. You know, if you have to build a table, you have to build a table. And so the carpentry skills, it was really outside of the theater space that I gained those. I was able to use those a lot in college and towards my technical theater degree. And then as I graduated from college, I came to work at the theater. I was just looking for a position. And at the time, the only thing was set crew, running the crew at night. So I was like, well, I'm in. I was like, I want to be involved in theater, so that's where I wanted to be. So I started just teching shows at night, and then the set designer found out that I had carpentry skills. And so he's like, well, we need some extra hands building this set or different things. And so I was brought in just to build some specialty pieces as far as carpentry goes. And from there, it transitioned to more and more and more things. And then they found out I had a technical theater degree, and experience in lighting. So then they brought me on to do some lighting things. And so then my position has transitioned into what it is today. So like most theaters, one of the major issues that we run into is how to put brakes on large items. For example, our set pieces, we're a theater in the round, so most of the time you see all four sides of your piece. You also have many people running up and down it or various things. This is a large staircase in which we need a way to stop it from moving as the actors move on it. One of our easiest solutions, kind of simple, is basically a homemade barrel bolt that is large in scale that we're lucky enough to have, we can put holes in the floor, so the pin will just drop into the hole in the floor and it breaks the piece so that the actors can move around as they will. The techs can simply drop it in. All right, so another thing that I wanted to talk about is it's always a trick of how do you get lights inside of something, a moving piece, for example. Now this piece, for example, is fairly simple. All of the lights on it are actually just fixtures that you could buy at any lighting store, you know, Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that. They're all very just Christmas lights or different things. It's also got some trains that function, you know, some pretend fire pieces, you know, very basic things, but the simplicity of it is it's all run, a tech is inside of it, and it's all run off of 6-ways. So they've got the power splits, so we've got the main cord that just trails behind, gives it all power, and then the tech has the ability to turn on and off different trains, different things. It's very simple, but very effective in that it gives you the functionality of controlling all of your lights, controlling all of your moving toys and different things, all at the same time. It's all controlled off of your light board, ultimately, where you can turn on and off your power, or have it plugged into the wall if you need to. Another issue that we run into is power to flies. So one of the things that we've come up with is pretty simple as well. Is you take a retractable cord reel and you take out the locking mechanism so it will always pull itself back up. In that way, you can have power running to a fly. As you fly it in, your power will go with it, and as you fly it out, your power will retract itself back up. Simple and easy solution. We have messed up our fair share of cord reels as we fix them, but once you get the first one, you're usually pretty good on the system of modifying them. It's a relatively simple modification, and the cord reels are relatively easy to purchase. Also, as far as lighting goes, there are many right now wireless controls for your lighting systems, which are very effective and becoming very reasonably priced. We use quite a few in our current shows. Like for example, you have to have it run off of a battery, but for example, in the car, we've got lights that light the actors in the car from inside the car itself. So there's a lot of options out there that now with LEDs, you don't need as much power, you don't need as much control, and it's a very simple solution to look into. Those are some of our basic lighting solutions of how we can get power and control to our lighting fixtures.
Now, Brian, you didn't grow up participating in theater.
No.
How did you come to work at Hale Centre Theatre?
Well, long story short, I was employed in the industrial electrical side for a long time, and I'm friends with everyone that works here. They said, hey, we're looking for an electrician. I thought, well, after 17 years, I'm ready for a change. Maybe I'll give it a try. I've always been artistic, and they knew I liked grease, so they thought, yeah, come on over.
And you were a musician, right?
Yes, yep, played in local bands for many, many years.
So you are a master electrician.
Yes.
What schooling did you do for that?
It was through a local community college, a trade school. Get a license through the state, and that's it.
Why do you think stage automation helps us at Hale Centre Theatre?
It helps us be safer. We can replicate stage movement over and over to within 1/100th of an inch. We can, for the actors, to have it do the exact same thing over and over, just it builds their confidence, makes them know that what's going to happen is going to happen when it does, and make it safer.
Tell me how you think that our Navigator system, the software that runs the stage and our winches, helps with landing pieces on the stage.
Well, they're all controlled with absolute encoders, so they track down to the 1,000th of an inch, and we're never off more than 1/100th of an inch. Because what that allows us to do is we can write rules to prevent things from colliding. So if we're moving the stage up and flying a giant piece in, no matter where it is, it'll perform a mathematical equation and not let them ever pass each other.
What's the heaviest piece we've ever flown in with the precision of just gently landing on the stage?
Wow. I would have to say the airplane that we did in Drowsy Chaperone, which, if I'm not mistaken, had 12 actors on it.
Probably.
So it landed, picked them up, and then flew away with them on it. And it actually exceeded the weight capacity of any single winch, so our Navigator allowed us to sync 2 winches together to combine the power of the 2 winches to lift the load that we needed safely. So what we got here, when we first got this, it was gas powered. Couldn't have that on stage, so we made it electric. It's actually a lot easier to do than what most people would think. And this right here is what we did, was use 90 volt DC inverter and took the motor out and just put the gearbox right on the other side of the transmission, so we can just run it forward and still use the forward and reverse of the car that was built in. To do the speed controls on this, we actually took the turn paw out of the 90 volt controller and used the slide paw hooked directly up to the gas pedal, so you can control your speed just as you would a regular car. Let me show you what the slide pot looks like. We got to go over here now. It's easier to cut to this. You're not still rolling, right? Because we're going to trick you because it's easier to see this one than it is the other one. Ready? So this here is what a slide pod is. It's 0 to 10K, 0 being stop, 10K being going. So it's what you do is you hook that up to your gas pedal, and that will give you a signal back to it, back to your DC controller, and that's how it controls your speed. Go ahead, Rob. So there, we're full speed. There, we're stopped. Take a look in here. Well, right here you got the, that's the 90 volt DC motor. That's what drives the drive shaft. And then here's the wire. This is your controller here. And the batteries we have in parallel so we can have longer life on stage. And that's how we make gas-powered cars electric. Okay, another little trick we've learned at the theater is to turn things on and off remotely on stage. It used to be a lot harder than it is now, but with the new wireless technology, it's gotten a lot better and a lot more reliable. We use the RF, which is radio frequency, because it doesn't have to be line of sight. Like we need a transmitter, receiver, but they can be hidden inside boxes, set pieces, stuff like that. This little device right here is not only affordable, but it's real easy to use. So we use them in like this music box here. It needs to be on stage, turn on, turn off, a little bit while later, turns back on. And it's quite easy to do. We just send a 12 volt battery through this. When you turn this on, we fire a 12 volt coil in a relay that will turn on the inverter that turns on the turntable. So let's demonstrate that for you. So Truly Scrumptious is up here. She's doing her toy doll dance, but then it stops. Stop it, Rob. And so then it goes for a second. Can't get it going, can't get it going. They simulate, they kick it, boom, starts again. Up till now, we've talked a little bit about how to do automation and how to do it cheap and fast. Now we want to talk a little bit about when you progress and get further into automation. This is our NAVIGATOR system. It lets us command motion, position, write safety rules, and queuing. Our stage is 5 quadrants lifted by spiral lifts electrically. And let me show you kind of what it does here. You'll notice this is actually tracking positions of every axis to the 100th of an inch. NAVIGATOR is a complex system. It's a system of servers that talk to the PLC, that talks to the motors, that tell the VFDs and motors where to go, how to go. And it's amazing. Definitely get it if you get to this point.